Welcome back to MidEast in Depth. Today we will be looking at the situation in Iraq. The Kurdistan region of Iraq is dealing with an influx of Iraqi refugees following the takeover of Mosul and Tikrit by the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham, the ISIS. Vladimir van Wilgenberg says Omar Abdulsami, a member of the Iraqi army and a Kurd, told Al-Monitor they fought the ISIS close to a hospital. According to Abdulsami, the Iraqi army could have defended Mosul if they stood their ground. If just 300 soldiers defended Mosul, we could defend all of Mosul. But in the Iraqi army, only the Kurds fought. Even off-duty Kurdish soldiers helped us. The police even helped Daesh against the Iraqi army and gave their cause. Yunus Ibrahim, a member of the Kurdish Zerevani forces, said that at one point there was an accidental skirmish between the ISIS Kurdish forces and the Iraqi army, which wanted to open the road to flee Mosul. Some civilians who fled suggest that the Iraqi army is weak because they are not well liked in Mosul. Al-Monitor witnessed Iraqi soldiers on the 1st of June randomly firing shots in the air in the streets of Mosul and stopping and harassing the local population. The inhabitants of Mosul see the Iraqi army as a Shiite occupation army from Baghdad, and some civilians welcomed the ISIS when they entered Mosul and removed all Iraqi army checkpoints. Attila Nujayfi, governor of Ninawa province, has reportedly lobbied for local police to replace the Iraqi army in the area, but Baghdad maintained its military presence, which is deeply unpopular with many residents. Also on Iraq, an article by David Ignatius in the Daily Star. He wrote about extremism in the Middle East. He titles his piece "An Alarm Bell That Violent Extremists Are on the Rise." Ignatius says the capture of Mosul, the hub of northern Iraq, by al-Qaeda-linked militants is an alarm bell that violent extremists are on the rise again in the Middle East. It's a good time for President Barack Obama to explain more about what he plans to fight this menace without making the mistakes of the past. Obama needs to alert the country to the renewed extremist threat, partly to clarify the record. The writer notes Mitt Romney's trial to shake Obama's optimistic narrative about al-Qaeda. It's really not on the run, he said. It's certainly not hiding. This is a group that is now involved in 10 or 20 countries, and it presents an enormous threat to our friends, to the world, to America, and we must have a comprehensive strategy to help reject this kind of terrorism. Obama countered Romney's statement with his basic campaign mantra. He said, "We ended the war in Iraq, refocused our attention on those who actually killed us on 9/11, and as a consequence, al-Qaeda's core leadership has been decimated." Ignatius believes the return of al-Qaeda isn't Obama's fault. There are too many complicated factors at work here, but it helps explain the rage of many Republicans about Benghazi. Obama made a solid start in framing a new counter-strategy in his graduation address at West Point last month. He said today's principal threat no longer comes from a centralized al-Qaeda leadership. Instead, it comes from decentralized al-Qaeda affiliates and extremists. He proposed a new counter-terrorism partnerships fund of up to $5 billion, which will allow us to train, build capacity and facilitate partner countries on the front lines, he said. And now we are joined by Professor Kamal Majid. Thank you very much for being on Press Review.
Thank you.
Tell us more of what you think of the situation in Iraq these couple of days. How do you think the Iraqi government could control all of this?
Well, I don't think the Iraqi government is controlling anything because the forces which are occupying the western side of Iraq are well equipped, and there are indications that the Ba'athist army officers who were kept out of Iraq, out of the government, are now working with the Islamic State, according to Professor Fawaz Jarjis, and also according to Dr. Ghassan Atiyah, and they are succeeding in their advance towards Baghdad. And in fact, it is very much looks like an aim to separate Iran from Syria, because by occupying the west of Iraq, the Iranians cannot go through Iraq into Syria. Mm-hmm. And any aim the Iraqis, the Syrians and the Iranians had that there will be easy access will become difficult. And also, it is an application of Mr. Biden, the Vice President Biden's project to divide Iraq into three. And this is why exactly the Kurds, as soon as they heard or saw the advance of the Islamic State, they decided themselves to occupy Kirkuk, advance southwards to Antuz Khurmatu, and also to occupy Sinjar and Khanaqin. In other words, all the areas which were disputed between Iraqi government and the Kurdish autonomous government is now occupied by the Kurdish Peshmerga forces. In that case, since also Tikrit and nearly Samarra is occupied and their forces, the Islamic State forces, are now only 90 kilometers from Baghdad, the difficulty for the Iraqi government, it is very difficult for the Iraqi government to do much. Especially the Parliament of Iraq met today to give some emergency decisions to the Prime Minister. They failed even to take a decision because most of the members, or the right number of members, weren't there to pass any resolution. So now the Iraqi government has no sanction from the Parliament, and therefore all this indicates that the Iraqi government is in a bad position. The Iranian government, President Rouhani, has definitely announced quite clearly that it will go into Iraq and fight against what he called terrorism in Iraq. And also the NATO has met. The Turkish government is very likely, according to the ex-ambassador of America in Iraq, Mr. James Jeffrey, he says that Turkey may interfere in Iraq, and if Iran interferes, and that is what the President Rouhani has said, then it is very likely that, according to Mr. James Jeffrey, it's very likely that the American government will interfere.
And while you think that it is a plan plotted by Joe Biden, and it seems that it's working somehow, do you believe an Iranian intervention in Iraq to protect its borders and Iraq even against extremism will be a dangerous decision to do from the Iranian part?
Well, first of all, I don't think, I never said it's a plot by Biden. I'm saying the Biden proposal is now in full application, because the Sunnis are now occupying Mosul and Tikrit and the rest of the western Iraq. The Kurds are occupying all the way from Sinjar to Khanaqin, and also Kirkuk to Khurmatu, and further down towards Jalawla. So the Biden's project has already been put into operation. But now the Islamic State may not be able to occupy Baghdad. Whether it did or not, the Iraq is already divided into three.
Professor Kamal Majid, author of books on Iraq, thank you very much for joining us. And for more updates, please visit levant.tv. Thanks for watching MidEast in Depth, and bye for now.